Well, hi again, everyone. And as Rebecca said, this is a talk from three of us. I'm going to give a short introduction, and then I'm going to pass it to Angela and Vusi. Putting patient centricity into practice. And we kind of joked about the name. It's a good thing we're not, you're not sitting too close to me, because all those putting patient centricity into practice, a lot of P's, a lot of virtual spit coming at you. But we like the name because that's really what it's about, right? Sorry, Eric. Wipe my screen. You all are in this field, so this slide has been your life in the last chunk of years. They're the early days, right, where we had paper studies. Everything was centralized. For us with DataFacts and DFdiscover, it was very nice because you had the CRFs, you signed off on everything, you're building the database. While you're doing that, you're getting it all ready. Hopefully everything is signed off and ready to go before it starts. Sometimes that wasn't possible, but that was okay with some of the edit checks behind the scenes. And when there were changes to protocols and new CRFs or questions added and hidden, it was a lot easier to handle because you took the paper, you hid one question, you added another one, you could do it behind the scenes. So it was very much a back office process. Always busy. No one in our industry has ever been sitting around twiddling thumbs. It was always very busy. But what we thought was busy then, in those middle years, it certainly changed. When hybrid studies and full-on EDC came in, that changed the world of data managers. We needed to get things set up much more quickly and more perfectly. Edit check had to work correctly if a site staff member is going to answer it. It's not a data manager coordinator in the back saying, oh, okay, I get it, let me fix that. So setup was faster. And then there was definitely a greater need for wider training, whether it's the site staff on how to use our software, on monitors, how they can interact with the software. So more need for more detailed training for people who don't work in a back office and whose full job is not data management. And at the time, newer technologies were emerging with APIs. We can do things on tablets. How about on phones? So it was all coming and coming, and then boom, 2020 hits, and it all came smacking at us. And it was time to put some of those new technologies into practice. So we had to quickly adapt. The webinars I mentioned in my intro, one of them was in May 2020. We gave a webinar on ePro and introducing DF Engage. That was with Angela, Eric, myself, Rebecca, and then Tice from Curve Tomorrow. Those of you who were at DFUG 2019 in Annapolis met Tice's colleague, Sandy, and he gave a talk on the technology. And between September 2019 and into early 2020, we put it into action and we were ready to go. We had this technology. When are we going to use it? Hello, pandemic. Here it came. So we were able to definitely get more fully involved with ePro and DF Engage. And thanks to those of you who completed the breakfast questionnaire, the test questionnaire back in May of 2020. That was really useful to get your feedback and to learn to see how those of you who are technically focused, what issues and problems you had, and then to figure out how to make it easier for sites and then for the participants themselves. And then a year later, we gave a presentation. This was with Laura and Donna, Rebecca, and myself, not on ePro, but on EConsent. So now we're still in the pandemic. It's still important to have patient-centric tools, to have tools that can be accessed remotely. And so we described the DF consent. We introduced ClinConsent and described how that was working for an ongoing study. And just a quick wrap up of the case study. This is what I had described in May as well. This is a COVID-19 treatment study in South Africa. Like all COVID studies, very aggressive timelines. There's no time to wait. We had to get these trials going. And of course, it's with COVID-19 concerns. At the time, we didn't know if, did the virus remain on paper? How are we going to handle all this paper? How are the monitors going to view the data remotely? How are the sites going to enter the data? So it was everything E, Esource, EDC, ePro, EConsent. And we had the best study team ever. Thankfully at DFnet, probably like you, some of our non-COVID trials went on hold. They were paused. Some of our non-COVID work was pushed out. So we really did have time to, everybody jumped in. This was everybody at the company across many time zones. And we really had great support from our external partners, from WeGuy with Tice and his team for DF Engage, and EConsent with Anil and Smita and their team for EConsent, as well as the CRO who was as the project lead. You know, they've really been a strong support for us during this process. And of course, it was entirely virtual, like everything, across 6 time zones: Seattle, Dundas, the Netherlands, South Africa, India, Australia. So, you know, getting used to 3 a.m. calls, 4 a.m. trainings, 10 p.m. But we just want to thank everyone at DFnet who led this effort, and it's just about to wrap up now. We had 3 data managers who were really all in: Laura J, Angela, and Busi. And I'm going to pass it now to Busi and Angela to describe their experiences and the lessons that they learned running this trial.
Thanks, Lisa. So Esource and EDC, I'm going to back up a bit because we were already using these pre-COVID-19. And there were benefits, of course, to Esource and EDC. There's no paper. It's environmentally friendly. There's no file cabinets and no patient binders to organize. For site staff, they're entering data directly into our system. So there's interactive warnings. There's real-time edit checks that reduce time and errors. And the sites and monitors, they can use our system technology. They can use our subject scheduler to schedule patients based on our visit map. They can resolve queries without having to wait for a QC report. They can go in immediately and resolve QCs. And it streamlines communication between the site and the monitor. They can use our QC and notes to communicate between each other without having to use email and phone. Then there's use of tablets. We have DF Collect and DF Web, so the site staff can move with the patient from one room to the next. And monitors, it's real-time monitoring. The data is available immediately, and so they can monitor immediately. And there's full audit trails. Everything is in one place. Of course, there's considerations with EDC and Esource. The protocol should be written with the intent to use Esource. And the sponsor needs to consider the site. What is the location and the geography of the site? Can they handle e-technology? As Eric alluded to, we had to place for Boende satellite there. So they need to consider the site. And site staff, how many people do they need at the site? Do they need more people to enter EDC? Do they need more laptops, more computers? And then for data management, of course, there's the setup of the study. It's unlike a paper study, so the database needs to be ready. As Lisa said, we need to have the visit map, edit checks, et cetera. Everything needs to be in place for go live. And there's training considerations. We need to develop materials to train the monitors, the sponsor, and the site staff thoroughly on our system. And that was all pre-COVID, and then COVID-19 hits. And suddenly we need to accelerate the adoption of e-technology into our platforms to accommodate the patient's role in reporting data. Next slide.
Did I go too far?
Nope, that's perfect. Thank you. All right. So involving the patient in DF Engage. So DF Engage has benefits to using ePro. And I'll keep saying this, paperless, it's paperless. There's benefits to that. But there's cost reduction too then. There's BYOD, bring your own device. So in the study we managed, the participant was using their own phone to record their responses. There's fewer on-site visits, so that could mean less staff, fewer hours needed at the site. And this takes on added benefit during COVID. Like we said, we didn't know if paper carried the virus or not. So with ePro, there's less worry for transmission from fomites, and there's less patient-staff interaction. And the data quality, so this increases. It's direct from source. There's less worry about perhaps transcription errors from site. And there's real-time in DF Explorer. We're seeing the data immediately entered by the participant. So this benefits monitors and it benefits analysis. And compliance can be better. So it's a better patient experience. The patient has the privacy and comfort of their own home to enter this data. They may be more apt to give complete, honest answers versus telling the site staff sitting in front of them. And there's no need to travel. They can answer these questions right from the comfort of their own home. And this can lead to reliability of our data. But then there's new considerations. Technology. For our COVID treatment study, we used, like we said, patient phones. But they wanted a backup plan. They also wanted the ability for the participant to choose. Did they want to use their phone, or did they want the site to call them and record their responses? And one step further, they wanted these barcoded forms just in case there were connectivity issues. So that could be barcoded forms sent in via DFsend. And for the database, that meant we had to look at our team. So we had to incorporate new team members. We had WeGuide and software developers involved in database setup, which unlike before. And how many staff members did we need? We needed increased setup and testing. How many people do we need to manage throughout the study, like setting up user permissions in DFUG for the patients and ongoing maintenance. And the setup itself, we needed to consider how to incorporate ePro into the visit map, into the page map, the plate setup, and like I said, in this case, barcoded forms. All the questions need to be put on one page. So we needed to figure out how to do that. And it needed to be in 5 total languages for our treatment study. We're used to having translations and CR backgrounds, but what did this mean to have it in our actual database? So thank you, Eric, for the translation map for questions that would show up on the participant's phone in the chosen language that they chose. And then there were testing considerations. There are new processes and new devices for all of us. So we're not just testing on our laptops or our desktops anymore. We're using phones. We're using an iPhone. We're using an Android for testing. We're testing offline versus online capabilities. And then training again, how do we train the sponsor, the site, and now the patient effectively and efficiently, especially under these tight timelines. Oh, and by the way, if you'd like more details about the setup for DFEngage, Richard Veerman from Avania will be presenting on that tomorrow. Next slide, please.
Hi everyone, this is Lucy. I'm coming in from South Africa. So I'm presenting the DFEngage challenges that we've experienced with the site. So DFEngage has been developed internally, and we are all excited about it. And then there we comes now that the participants and the site has to work on DFEngage. First of all, it was scared to everybody that, oh, okay, this is a new technology. Now that the participant has to enter data through their cell phones and all that. And then the one challenge that we had in South Africa that we didn't think about is that in South Africa, as we all know, that people, they would keep their phones more than 2 years. And then a lot of phones can be outdated and the old phone is still being used. So, and also we experienced that some of the phones, they are generic phones in South Africa that are being sold. And then all these types of issues, they were giving us challenges when it comes to the software. And then some of them didn't have software updates. So it was very difficult to confirm whether they bought an original phone or not. This caused issues with functionality of the DFEngage app on other phones. We also had data to use on app. So we asked the question, it was supposed to be full data or a social data plan. So in other countries, you might be surprised why I'm talking about full data plans and social data plans. But here in South Africa, yes, we do have that. So the service providers will give you an opportunity to have social data plan, whereby that particular social data plan, you'll be able to communicate with people using WhatsApps and Facebook and so on. We didn't think about it as well. So we assumed that everybody's using full data plan until we assessed and got some issues with the app usage. So we have realized that some other participants were using the social data plan, because they'll be telling you that, oh, okay, I cannot access the app, my phone doesn't show the app, and so on. So we dig down and we find out that those were using the social data plan. So we also had another issue, power outages and load sheddings in South Africa. It's very common, as some of you from DFUG, they from here in South Africa. Even now, anything can happen while I'm presenting. So we had that problem as well, that the quality of the network will be degrading and then causing poor internet connections, which affect the app as well. So the site staff was expected to train the participants on what to do if this happens, and what to do when this happens. And this led to the participants to switch on and off their phones, and the data could not transfer into DF Explorer, causing other issues. So when there's load shedding, the participant will keep on like trying to switch on and off the phone, trying to get the internet coverage. Again, internet coverage, and it's in some other areas in South Africa, it's very slow because of the developing economy and the infrastructure. So there are many households that don't have like proper internet coverage. So that again, it was a consideration for us to say, okay, but when we train the participants to use the DFengage app at site, they were able to access it, but when they get home, they've got issues of internet coverage. So another issue was the participants to use DFengage when the site personnel is going to call them anyway. So this introduction of the new technology caused the site to have a fear that DFengage is taking over their jobs. So when the participant faces any issues with DFengage, instead of them going to the error code listing and try to resolve the issue, it was a bargain to say, okay, now I can call the participant. So they didn't think twice to do that. That was our other challenge. The other challenge is that once that is done, that the site staff is opting to call the participant, you find that now the data will be collected twice. There is a patient data and also the site staff member data. So now we are sitting with these two data. We had to think about which data matters most. And then the consideration was that the patient data will be the main data, which will be overwriting the site data. Next slide, please. So considering all of those challenges, these are the tips that we can give if you are considering using DFengage. So it's very important to collect feedback from site and others on the usability of the app. This will help you to understand the challenges, whether they are the challenges are app development challenges, processes, or requirements for retraining. So those kind of feedbacks, they help you to assess what exactly is the problem, and also consider the demographic area where you want to use the DFengage. Provide detailed instruction on using the app. We did provide detailed instruction on using the app, but we have realized that a lot of site members will not like to use the training slides to refer back whenever they have a problem. So considerations were to provide them with the error code list with them, so that whenever there are challenges with the app, they can first go to the error code list and then see if that particular error can be resolved without calling the data management team. So the other thing that we thought about is like creating the we wonder what was going on with the participant, because at the clinic you'll find that it was easy for the participant to complete to install the app, and then they manage as well to instruct the participant on how to use the app. But when they get home and then things changes, a practice questionnaire. So the practice questionnaire will have the participant will have a chance with the site staff member to go through each and every screen of DFengage and also go through all different data fields, like the numerics, how to enter data on numerics, dates, times, text, and checkboxes, and also just moving through until the end to save your surveys. And also this was very helpful because it gives confidence to the participants in understanding the app, and you get a chance or the participant to ask questions. The idea of providing a standard cost-effective latest smartphone, it came to our mind as well. That can be an option as well, whereby all the participants can have like a cost-effective latest smartphone to use, so that we don't end up with the challenges of different smartphones and outdated smartphones. So the other
5 minutes left, Lucy. Sorry, 5 minutes left.
Okay. I'm almost done. So the other one is talking to service providers to customize data for the app usage and to provide to participants. As we all know that if data is not controlled, it can be easily used for other things. Thank you. Over to you, Angela.
Right, next slide. So involving the patient in DFConsent. Yes, there's EConsent benefits. And just like all things E, of course, it's paperless. I've already gone over that. And it's remote. It can be done remote. All parties can be off-site. The patient can be at home to consent. The investigator and the admin countersign can do this from anywhere, just like the monitor can do this from anywhere as well. And with our in DFConsent, we have a notes section for the administrator and site staff to add notes there to communicate. And they can upload documents, like the ID can be uploaded. And this helps the monitor to monitor from anywhere, and it provides a clear audit trail. And it's a better patient experience. Again, it's convenient offsite. They can do this from home. They can do it on a phone, a tablet, or the computer. They can review at their leisure. They can confer with family at home about it. And it's empowering. DFConsent has the ability to use supplemental videos about the research to educate the patient. It gives the patient the ability to ask questions virtually, so they have real-time responses. And for our COVID treatment study, we had the patient on site, but they were in a separate room using a tablet. And we used a query dialog box for communication with site staff who were in a nearby room. And again, there's considerations, there's IRB materials. The sponsor should be cognizant of wording when reviewing their ICFs, because sometimes wording may differ in an electronic environment versus a paper environment. Then the database, it's a separate database from DXplore. So again, we had to rely and integrate with our new partners, EConsent team, to do the setup. And again, how many team members do we need for this to coordinate with this EConsent team and to set up the database? And also to manage the study throughout. Again, like DFEngage, we need to set up user permissions and ongoing maintenance. And again, if there's translations, COVID-19 treatment study, there were 5 languages. So we needed to consider this for the main ICF, the storage ICF, testing ICF. And so not just translations for the ICFs themselves, but translations for the instructions within the consent database. Those all had to be done up front. And then testing, like DFEngage, these are new processes and devices for us. So we're testing on phones, tablets, and computers. This increases the testing time and maybe the number of people we had to use for testing. And again, training. How do we train the sponsor, the site, and the patient effectively and efficiently? Next slide.
Quickly going through this. Again, new technology sometimes or all the time requires high investment and resources. Everybody was used to using paper consent and finding difficult to translate their work into E, understanding what they want to do versus telling us what to do. E-consent screens will look different from paper consent forms. That was another challenge. More people involved in setup. Coordination is a must. It helps to have a lot of people involved in testing and reviewing e-consent layout, flows, and user friendliness. And then again, setup, more information is needed upfront. Like we had a challenge of the translations of instructions within the EConsent system. So that was not considered at first. And then we had a challenge that we had to rush over and make sure that those were translated as well and went for approval. Account for complexity. The EConsent system has multiple flow needed depending on how many sites, languages, and ICF that will be the ICF that will be developed. Implementation of all those steps requires time as it associated with a change in behavior and way of working. And again, internet connectivity and power outages was also a challenge, but the paper backup was there. Next slide, please. Talking about connectivity issues, we all experience this is me as well, as we are discussing the slides of DFUG, and I experienced the same thing. So you see, as I'm saying, having connectivity issues, I'm switching off the camera. Like now, I'll be happy to switch it off if I've got that. You can see that I ended up screaming because my network was failing me. Next slide, please. So the tips for EConsent, you need to consider the processes by which you will be operationalizing EConsent. Document in detail what organization requires and what it wants to achieve. Get everybody involved in reviewing each and every process. Divide the process into a defined sequence of steps such as planning phase, development phase, go live phase, monitoring phase, and close out. Identify the task, timing, roles, and responsibilities. Communicate your timelines clearly for each task. Never try to do a lot in a short space of time, as it will result in errors and spending much more time. Consider data security. Information. Provide training materials in multiple platforms, as we said, slides, screenshots, videos, as it has been proven that visuals can grab attention when combined with text and slides. Thank you. Over to you, Angela.
Thank you. And just to wrap this up, I just wanted to cover some lessons learned. There are many lessons learned through this treatment study. But first, not all technology is created equal, as Busi alluded to. People use old phones. People have different data plans that aren't as robust as others. So the sponsor needs to be aware of this up front so they can plan accordingly. Perhaps purchase phones for the patients for consistency. And then adapting the internal team. So at DFnet, as we said, we had to incorporate outside members, WeGuide and EConsent. And what would we do with our internal team? More testing members, more members maybe to delegate tasks to. And then test for all scenarios. So there's all types of real life issues. Like for instance, we didn't expect users to stay offline for multiple days in a row or to have internet interruption for long periods of time. So we need to involve as many people as possible when we're testing. And vary training materials. We're no longer in person, so there's not in-person training. So we need to be creative, combine training slides, combine written materials, create videos, and expect lots of questions. Even if we think we've covered everything in training, there will still be lots of questions. So be available for that. We have 24/7 support in South Africa and the States, and offer refresher trainings as needed. And finally, celebrate the successes. Amidst all the challenges, there's always some small successes in there. The first time I logged into the study, I went to view status and saw a patient logged in at the same time as me. This was overwhelming. Took a snapshot of that and sent it to the whole team. So it's exciting. So celebrate these successes, take the lessons learned and move forward so that we can perfect the technology and the experience for everyone. Thank you. Next slide. All right. And back to Rebecca.
Yeah, thank you, Angela, Lucy, and Lisa. 24/7 support, among other things, must have been a challenge indeed. We have one question from Eric and another question from Dan. So I will start with you, Eric, just because you were the first one. And Eric is asking, was there any requirements to collect source documents in addition to IPRA data, and just suggestions for the best practices?
Yes, not for ePro, unless, as Angela said, that if the source was paper, when they were calling the participants on a Saturday from their house, the site staff members wrote it down and then they scanned it. So that was scanned in with the barcode. Yes, for other parts of the study with, I think there were like ECG scans that were uploaded. And then for EConsent, yes, there were other, there is, you can upload additional documents, notes, but there was nothing regular that needed to be uploaded. Angela, Busi, anything else?
Yes, on EConsent, the most important thing that they needed to upload is their IDs. So it was one of the one that was supposed to be uploaded. And then on ePro, it was not so compulsory, except that we had paper backup in case that the participant has been called for any other reason than they have engaged in having issues.
Just want to point out with the IDs, because people often ask about that. It was a sponsor and team decision that for this study, what was appropriate was to scan and upload the South African national ID, and then the monitors reviewed it to confirm that this was the person. This is why it's really great to have EConsent as a separate database. And we don't bring that information into DFexplore. And you don't need to do that. Other ways of doing it is with two-factor authentication.
Mm. Thank you. Another question from Dan, and this will be the last one. At PHRI, when we were implementing EConsent processes for some COVID studies, a challenge was capturing participant signatures or oral identity confirmation, like witnesses. Can you speak on how the EConsent approached this?
There's a flow within DFConsent that you can have the participant or a legally authorized representative or an impartial witness. The participant signs, and if you have two-factor authentication required, then a message goes to them just like at the beginning, or it's they type their name, or they can sign with the stylus. So there are different options. And then with the ICF admin or the investigator, it's also an electronic signature with a reason for signature. I hope that answered your question, Dan.
Yeah, I think so. The two-factor authentication of the MFA, absolutely, because you go back to that specific person's phone. We were trying things like tablets were being used, but the participant didn't own the tablets. So the MFA there didn't really work. It didn't identify them specifically. So there's just, there was a few things in there that were a little challenge. Witnesses and stuff like that. It was, again, during COVID, or if the person was doing it from home, again, you needed like that healthcare provider or a nurse or somebody that knew the patient, or that, right, that they signed in their presence. And it wasn't always the case that there was clarity of the person's doctor or physician. It might have been just like a charge nurse or somebody else that didn't know the person. And there was a lot of discussions around that. So it wasn't so much a technology thing, it was a process, and a process on a soft sort of what's the best way to go about this.
Right.
Dan, just to add to that, Dan, the EConsent has two-way video as well. Is that correct, Lisa? So
Yes.
you can do, there's a chat functionality that can be directed back to the site, or two-way videos. They can actually do kind of a sort of like a Zoom conversation within the application. And that might be useful for these remote cases where not just identity, but, you know, being more connected to a person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see where like a physician or a primary caregiver for that patient could enroll them or have them go through that EConsent process, and they, you know, visually recognize the person and essentially act as a witness through that process. The challenge would be more like if you had a team of people that were trying to enroll patients. So in COVID studies, somebody's in the hospital, you have a study team hearing that somebody's a COVID patient, you want to enroll them in the trial. They're talking to somebody they don't know necessarily, that there's no previous relationship. And so even the video part of it is again, you're consenting somebody, you know, do you really know the person at the other end is this specific person, this name, health card number, whatever it is, right? But it was just what's the REB and what are the rules around that, what's acceptable. And in the early days of doing these trials, it was all over the place. Nobody knew what was feasible or not. And
Right.
That was a big challenge for us as we looked at EConsent type stuff. So it's great to have the tools. It's the rest of it that goes around it that the regulatory bodies and everybody else has to be comfortable with. So hopefully we all get there and find what works well, because I think this is a great tool to use really will help recruitment for clinical trials.
Yeah, great.
Okay, thank you.
No, thanks to you, Dan. And thank you, Dari, for the addition, and Lisa and Angela and Pussy for preparing the slides.